Hello everyone, welcome back to the Big Man MTG YouTube channel. I am a rather large man with an equally large love for the game of Magic the Gathering. Today, for Deck the Halls number 3, I have a really fun deck that I've really enjoyed playing. I call it I Can Swing My Sword, because we are doubling our attack triggers with Isshin 2 Heavens as 1. For a red, white, and black, we get a legendary creature Human Samurai 3/4 that says if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Now, there may or may not be a bunch of creatures in this deck, and enchantments, stuff that say whenever you attack, do X, or whenever you're attacked, do X. So essentially, we're just going to be doubling those triggers, gaining a ton of value, flooding the board with a bunch of tokens, and just, turning everything sideways. This is kind of an Unga Boonga kind of deck. Don't really got to think, just as long as everything's sideways, you're going to be profiting. So let's get into the rest of the deck. A bunch of the creatures you're going to see in this deck create tokens when they're swinging. Like our first one here, Adeline Resplendent Cathar. Whenever she attacks, you, for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker. Usually in a 4-player game, you're getting 6 creatures because you're getting 2 for each opponent, which is instantly going to make her a 7/4, or I guess an 8/4 with it counting Isshin, if you have just her swinging, because you have 8 creatures on board instantly. So, this is a turn 4, 8/4 that's going to cause a lot of damage. It's going to make us more tokens. It makes just a bunch of great value for us early game. An Impakal Thousand Moon. Whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a 1/1 counter on an Impakal. Then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of 1/1 counters on an Impakal. Kind of a novel, but essentially, if we have our board flooded with, let's say we have 5 or 6 creatures out, we swing those sideways. We're going to put 5 counters on her, make 5 gnomes, then put another 5 counters, make 10 gnomes. Like, it's just, this gets out of control really quick. It helps us flood the board with a lot of non-artifact with artifact tokens, and they're tapped and attacking, so we are sending those out instantly. Aurelia, the law above. Sorry, long day so far. Flying Vigilant Haste Angel. For 5 mana, we get whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. So this is one of those things where it doesn't necessarily have to be me attacking to get the trigger. It's just whenever a player with 3 or more creatures attacks, you draw a card. Then if they attack with 5 or more, we get to deal 3 damage to each of our opponents, and I gain 3 life. So that's essentially 6 damage to each opponent, gain 6 life with our commander out. Brutal Horde Chief. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life, you gain a life. Really, just a good effect, especially if we have a bunch of tokens on the board. You can eventually see it as, we swing with 10, we're draining 20 life from each opponent. And if you pay its mana cost here for the ability, 3 and 2 hybrid Boros mana, we need to choose how our opponent's creatures block that turn. And this is really going to set us forward to just kind of swing in, don't have to worry about blocks, and just get a bunch of damage off of his ability and just hitting face. Caustic Bronco, this one's been a really fun one for the deck. Whenever Caustic Bronco attacks, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. You lose life equal to that card's mana value if Caustic Bronco isn't saddled. Otherwise, each opponent loses that much life. To saddle him, you need 3, which is tapping any number of other creatures you control, total power 3 or more, which, our commander, we're not really too focused on him swinging, so he can easily saddle this Caustic Bronco. We get 2 draw triggers off, and then we each get to drain life from our opponents. Commissar Severina Rain. I don't know too much about Warhammer 40k, so if I butcher that name, have mercy on me, but he has a really good ability that's similar to the Brutal Horde Chief, where whenever he attacks, each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. Then we can pay 2 and sack another creature to gain 2 life and draw a card. So when we're making a bunch of little tokens, little 1/1s, this guy can just come in, sacrifice them, help us gain life and draw, as well as just having a really good drain ability. That's gonna, like I said, when we have the board flooded, does a lot of damage, gets us, closer to bringing everyone's life totals down to 0. Delina, Wild Mage. Whenever she attacks, you choose target creature you control, then roll a d20. We are going to do this twice with our commander. 1 to 14, you just create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it, except it's not legendary, and in combat exile this creature. But if we roll a 15 to 20, we create one of those tokens, and they get to roll again. I've seen this happen where you get 6 rolls, 15 to 20, and it's just slamming big pieces on the board over and over again. This can be a absolute game ender, or you can get unlucky and roll, you know, the 1 to 14 a couple times, but you're still putting enough value on the board that this ends up being a really good piece for a finisher. Esper Sentinel is just there for the value of, you know, getting our opponents to help us draw cards if they're not willing to pay the X. And with the rest of the deck, there are some things that let us boost a bunch of our power on all of our creatures, not even just ones that are attacking. So later on, this will get, you know, a little harder to pay the costs. We get to start drawing a bunch more cards off of it. Itali, Primal Storm. Just, you know, a really good attack trigger that we get to double. Whenever he attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then I may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. This I have seen hit some absolute bombshells. I've hit Eldrazi's with it. I've hit Hullbreaker Horrors, a bunch of different, you know, good stuff. Sometimes it whiffs, but I mean, you're getting 2 triggers off of it, so you're at least looking at 8 cards to potentially just slap down on the board at that time. Goro, Disciple of Ryusei. It's mainly here just to give our creatures haste to end a turn. This is, you know, this is a very aggro deck, so we want to keep pushing damage as quick as we can. This really helps us get our damage off. Handwear Garrison. Whenever it attacks, create 2 1/1 red human creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. You know, we can get, if we don't have our commander, it's 2. If we have it, it's 4. Puts, you know, 4 damage on the board. But if we can meld it, which I believe we need Handwear Battlements, it turns into Handwear the Writhing Township, which this art is absolutely insane. I love it. Turns into a 7/4 with Trample Haste, and whenever he attacks, whenever it attacks, you put 2 colorless Eldrazi Horror creature tokens on the battlefield, tapped and attacking. You know, with our commander, we are potentially putting 12 more damage onto the board. Even without, we're putting 6 more with the 7. I haven't been able to meld it yet, but it just seems like when I do eventually get to do it, it's a really good effect to have going. Hero Bladehold, Battlecry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 till end of turn, so +2/+0. And whenever she attacks, you create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. A very common theme in this deck is to hear that tapped, or create the token that's tapped and attacking, because it'll still get that benefit off that Battlecry. Essentially, we're bringing in 2 to 4, you know, 3/1s that they're gonna hit face and they're gonna do a lot of damage. Erois, God of Victory. This is a card that kind of helps us really turn the brain off, really put the unga to the bunga. As you can see, creatures control have menace, so they have to be more decisive with how they're going to block. And it also prevents all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures we control. So we can turn cards sideways and not worry about them being destroyed by combat. Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs. Another card that benefits from us being attacked, because whenever the creature an opponent controls attacks, if you're the defending player, you get to create a 3/3 red ogre creature token unless that creature's controller pays 3. So if they are not willing to pay the 3 or the 6, if we have our commander out, we get 2 more bodies on the board that'll help us potentially block whatever damage they're, you know, throwing at us. So it kind of prevents people from wanting to attack us in the first place. It's a really good deterrent if we need to stall a little bit to get some of our other pieces going. Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin. This is a low to the ground CMC with 3. Whenever Krenko Tin Street Kingpin attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on it, then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to its power. So on the first swing you get with him, you swing with him, you need to put a counter on. He's a 2/3, you make 2 goblins. Put the second trigger on, put another counter. He's a 3/4, you make 3 goblins. You get 5 goblins off of him just from his first swing. Which, you know, if he dies, sure, whatever, it's fine, because we've already gotten the value that we needed out of him, essentially a 1 for 5. That puts 5 more power on the board. If he survives another turn and we get more swings with him, awesome. Mishra, let me put this to the front side. Mishra, claimed by Gix. Whenever you attack, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of attacking creatures. If Mishra, claimed by Gix, and a creature named Phyrexian Dragon Engine are attacking, which they are, the only reason Phyrexian Dragon Engine in this deck is for that reason, to meld these two. We get to exile them and then meld them into Mishra, lost to Phyrexia. It enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. So that means we get to get both of the ability of the Drain ability up here, as well as an ETB when it flips to Mishra, lost to Phyrexia. Fantastic art. I have been able to get him off a couple times, and when he hits the board, he is a problem. So He has a bunch of different triggers here that whenever he enters or attacks, we have to choose up to 3 of them. So target opponent discards 2 cards, deals 3 damage to any target, destroy artifact or planeswalker, creatures you control gain menace and trample to end of turn, creatures you don't control get -1/-1 till end of turn, or create 2 tap power stones. This does so much. It empties our opponent's hands, it potentially lets us pop a couple things with a 3 damage, destroy their artifacts or planeswalkers, creatures you control gain menace and trample. So if we're flooding the board, we're buffing them up with a bunch of different effects. We can eventually trample over for the game. We can, reduce our opponent's creature size by potentially -2/-2 if we choose that ability, for the first and second trigger. Or we just ramp out of control and get 2 tapped Power Stone tokens. This is the front side's really awesome, but if we can get to the back side, it makes it so much better. Mirel, Shield of Argive. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. So this almost acts as like a Grand Abolisher, with the ability of whenever she attacks, you create X/1/1 white colorless soldier artifact creature tokens, where X is the number of soldiers you control. So even with just herself on the field, that first trigger off the swing, we get 1, so we're up to 2. And then, next trigger, we see is 2, we're up to 4. So we're instantly getting at least 3 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens from her, creating a bunch of value for us on board. Othari, Sun's Glory, 5 mana, flying lifelink haste. So we're instantly able to swing with her the second she comes out. I think she's a she at least. Whenever Othari, Sun's Glory attacks, you get an emblem. You get an experience counter. Then you create a 2/2 red rebel creature token that's tapped and attacking for each experience counter you have. So the way it works out, you swing once, you get the counter. It makes It makes 1 2/2. Then second trigger happens, you get another counter. You make 2 2/2s. So you're putting 6 damage on the board that's tapped and attacking on turn 1 with Othari. And then it just keeps, kind of progressively getting more and more damage as you go. Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Double strike. That's pretty much all I really care about on this front side of the card. I guess it has Unearth if I ever want to, if it gets dealt with, and then I still want to meld with Mishra. It is simply just here to meld with the Mishra that we've seen earlier. Rakshasa Debaser. Whenever Rakshasa Debaser attacks, put target creature card from defending player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Now, even with just 1 trigger, that's a pretty good effect, but with us getting 2 triggers, we're eventually going to start putting 2 bodies on board. We could pull their big creatures, we can pull their, good value engines. For 6 mana, this is a pretty good creature to start turning sideways with this deck. And then if we have the mana eventually, because you'll see later we have a bunch of things that will generate mana for us, we can potentially encore it, bring it back out to get another chance to keep swinging with it. Selfless Samurai. This card is simply here just for the second ability as a kind of protection. So you can sacrifice Selfless Samurai to another target creature you control, get indestructible till end of turn. Now we can use this either to protect ourselves, or if we want to get a free swing with a creature, we can give it indestructible to try and get its trigger off. Skyhunter Strike Force. Melee. Whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each opponent you attack this combat. And it has Lieutenant, so if you control your commander, other creatures you control have melee. So, on its own, it's getting, if I swing at every opponent I have and we're just in a 4-player game, it's getting +3/+3, but with my commander Isshin out, we are getting +6/+6 on each attacking creature as long as I'm spreading the damage throughout the board. It just provides so much value for being a 3 mana, creature. Buffing 6, usually it can be a pretty good game ender. But yeah, that Lieutenant ability is, if we can give all our other creatures menace, or no, sorry, not menace, melee, we're just buffing a huge board. Sky Knight Vanguard. This is a really cheap early game. Whenever it attacks, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token that's tapped and attacking. I love the flavor text here. Just jump now. But yeah, this is going to help create us a few tokens early game to get going with that engine. Sun Titan. We have a lot of low to the ground creatures when it comes to CMC, so he's going to be able to return a bunch of the die on his ETB or attack. So, when he attacks, we're potentially getting 2 things back from our graveyard. Just a vigilant 6/6 body on board. Really good piece for this deck. Tectonic Giant. Whenever he enters or attacks or becomes a target of a spell an opponent controls, he either deals 3 damage to each opponent or exile the top 2 cards of our library, choose one of them until end of turn when we play that card. So this is either going to help us, you know, drain our opponents even further for damage, or dig for the pieces that we need to really finish off a game. Threefold Thunderhulk. I love this card. It's a 7 mana. It's so expensive, but you know, it's going to enter with 3 1/1 counters on it. Whenever it attacks, enters or attacks, you create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. Then you pay 2 and sack another artifact to put a 1/1 counter on Threefold Thunderhulk. Now, what I love with this is that if let's say I go to swing with him, I swing, it puts 2 triggers on the stack. The first trigger is going to create, you know, the three 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens, and before that second trigger resolves, I could pay 2, sacrifice, you know, 1. I could pay 4 to sacrifice 2 or whatever to buff up his 1/1 counters and potentially make more on the second swing. I find it's pretty it's versatile with the you know, how we stack those triggers and how we let them resolve. Vengeful Ancestor, you know, whenever he enters or attacks, go target creature. We're just gonna send, you know, creatures whatever we want just away from us. So be able to go 2 creatures and then have whenever those creatures attack, it deals 1 damage to its opponent, or sorry, to its controller. So we are, you know, it's gonna double that. It's gonna deal 2 damage to its controller. It's kind of just a way to, you know, have our opponents keep our big things away from us, but also deal a bit of drain damage while at the same time. Winota, Joiner of Forces. Whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible to end a turn, and put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, there aren't many humans in this deck. I think I have 6 humans, but they're very important pieces. So if I'm able to swing with, you know, a board, let's say like 6 non-human creatures, that gives us 6 Winota triggers with our commander is 12. So we essentially get to look up to 72 cards deep in our deck, which usually should get us a majority of our humans out, and that'll you know, it really it's a game finisher. I've had people like question it when I've played this card, and then once the triggers resolve, they go, oh, that makes sense. That's pretty good. That's pretty nuts. So yeah, it's a really good just piece in this deck to find our really good value engine humans. So this deck, the instants and sorceries aren't too involved with the main theme of the deck. Really, they're just a bit of control pieces to kind of help us catch up if we get behind, or ways to protect our creatures from, you know, board wipes or anything that'll kind of send us behind, because this is a very aggro deck. We tend to flood the board, so anything that kind of destroys everything is really not good for us. So starting with here, we have a Blasphemous Act. Spell costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. Typically with our board, I'm going to have more than 8 creatures, so it's only ever going to cost 1 red and deals 13 damage to each creature. So if we have ways, I do have ways in this deck to make all my creatures indestructible or protection from certain colors. So this will be able to help us kind of wipe the board and give us a free swing without our board being affected if we have that protection up from it. Damnation, destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. Again, with that, if I can make everything indestructible, this is just a way to clear the way for our creatures that are going to attack. As well, if we get stuck, you know, if we get behind in the game and we need to try and catch up, this is a way that we can potentially, you know, slow everyone else's game down. Demonic Tutor, this is going to typically help us find our really good pieces that, you know, that are going to help protect our creatures, that are going to help, you know, have a really good attack trigger that we can double. Really easy piece to just toss in any black deck, really, just because you can go get any card, put it in your hand shuffle, and you don't have to know your opponents know what it was. Jessica's Will, this is typically to get some early game mana, get some things out on the board. So let's you choose one. If you control a commander as you cast a spell, you can choose both instead. Add red for each card in the target opponent's hand. So typically if you get this off early game, you're getting between 5 and 7 mana. And then you can also exile the top 3 cards of your library and play them this turn. So with that mana you just generated as well, you can use to cast the cards that you just got off the top. So this is just another early game piece to either get ahead or trying to catch up when we're behind. Vandal Blast, I love putting this in every red deck. Destroy target artifact if you don't control for 1 red mana, so early games are all really good. But when you get to the mid to late game, overloading it for just 5 mana, just to destroy destroy each artifact you don't control. So essentially it's like similar to Cyclonic Rift in a sense that it's not going to be touching your stuff, but you're going to be able to deal with the artifacts your opponents have on board. Wrath of God, you know, again, just destroy all creatures, can't be regenerated. It's very similar to Damnation. Anguish Unmaking, exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. With us being in Mardu, it's kind of hard to deal with, you know, enchantments and artifacts, so we just have a way to deal with it if they become an issue. Boros Charm. This is one of the ways that we have of making our permanents indestructible, because with this you can either choose one of these abilities. Deals 4 damage to target player or planeswalker, permanents you control gain indestructible in a turn. That's the big one. Or if we ever want a finisher, if we have a, you know, somebody says, I swing with a big creature, to say, I'm just going to take it, I can give it double strike to end a turn and potentially take somebody out of the game. Chaos Warp, the owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it on the battlefield. This is another way we have of dealing with enchantments or just big, you know, things we can't really deal with at the time. Be careful though, because I have seen some absolute monsters come off the top of the Chaos Warp, and it almost ends up being worse than what it was originally, so this is a bit of a risky removal spell, but it can work really good. Deflecting SWAT, you know, with our commander being such a low CMC, these, if you control a commander, you may cast this without paying its mana cost spells, end up being really good, and we can help protect our commander if anybody tries to remove it early game. False Maneuver, another free spell with a commander, just creatures we control gain indestructible to end of turn. Another way to protect our creatures, get some free swings, and really get our triggers going. Swords to Plowshare, this is just, you know, every white deck should be running this. Exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. It's just such an easy, cheap removal spell that I don't see why you wouldn't be running it. Teferi's Protection. Until your next turn, your life total can't change. You gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out, and then exile Teferi's Protection. Always make sure you read this part, because if you play the Japanese card and forget about this, and you start, you know, ways to bring it back to your hand every turn, it's not a fun day for everyone. But with this deck being so aggro, we tend to want to leave our creatures sideways from our attack. We don't have much of a way of protecting ourselves. This is just kind of help us if, you know, somebody ends up sending lethal damage at us, or if they're going to try and wipe our board. This is just another good, easy protection spell. This deck has some pretty fun artifacts. We're starting here with one of my favorite ones in the deck, Underworld Narsil Reforged. It has Ascend, so if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. Whenever equipped creature attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on each creature control. If you have the City's Blessing, which this deck is very easy to get with a bunch of tokens that we're creating, put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control instead. So if we get this on a creature and swing with our double attack triggers, and we have the City's Blessing, we're now putting 4 1/1 counters on each creature we control. So that means each combat we're getting a overall buff on our creatures of +4/+4. So this is really strong. Anytime you get you can get this rolling in the game. It buffs us early game, late game, mid game. It's just so strong for what we want to do with our attack triggers. Arcane Signet, bunch of ramp, more mana stuff. This I like to, you know, I'm pretty lower on white in this deck, so being able to go grab 2 planes, right, you know, put them right into our hands is pretty nice, and also helps us catch up to our opponents if they're ahead of us in lands. Blade of Selves. This card is awesome because it gives a quick creature a myriad. So whenever it attacks for each opponent other than defending player, you may create a token copy that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker. Then you exile that token at the end of combat. But if we swing a creature equipped with this at an opponent, for each other opponent, it's going to create 2 copies going at them. So it's funny because you see with this card, when this card's equipped, you almost want the big, you know, issue creatures to swing at you instead of having 2 versions of it coming at you. So this is really strong to kind of put a bunch of damage on the board, potentially finish out a game. This just mana fixes us. You know, we're in 3 colors. Really, I mean, anything like 2 colors and above. I love running Chromatic Lantern just to kind of make sure we always have mana available to cast our spells. Dolmen Gate. This is very similar to Erois, God of Victory, if I said his name right. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking creatures you control. This just allows us to kind of, you know, again, shut off the brain, send creatures sideways, not worry about having blockers dealt with, or having blockers destroy our creatures. Just really good piece for us to get our aggro engine going. Helm of the Host. Usually this card ends up getting dealt with before I can get copies of Isshin, but if we can make another copy of Isshin with Helm of the Host, we're suddenly going from, you know, what was essentially double triggers to triple triggers, quadruple triggers, quintuple trigger. Like, you know, if the longer this stays on the field attached to Isshin, the more issue it makes for our opponents. This is just a really good equipment. Honestly, most decks, if you're dealing with triggers for creatures, I would recommend running this because it's just so strong. Horn of the Mark. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, this is typically gonna, you know, this is not a hard trigger to get for us. With this, we're gonna be able to look 10 deep and get potentially two creature cards out of it. So this helps us just kind of keep flooding the board with creatures, really get an aggro strategy going. Lowest Pedal, this is just early game, you know, potentially get Isshin out turn 2, or get another, you know, creature out, or like early attacker out turn 2, have Isshin come out turn 3, and start getting our value off of it right away. Mind Stone, just more mana ramp. Soul Ring ramp. Swiftfoot Boots, protection, more protection for our commander, because once people start realizing that, you know, these attack triggers are way too much to deal with, they tend to want to deal with Isshin, so this is just a way to make sure he's protected. Sword of the Animus is really awesome in this deck. With Mardu, like, you know, we don't have that much mana ramp in it. So whenever a quick creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. With our commander, this is going to allow us to get 2 lands, so we can help mana fix us and really help propel us into the game. Talisman of Conviction is just another good little mana rock. Signets, I tend to like vary between the signets or the talismans, depending on the deck, but for this one I decided to go with the talisman. Let's get to our enchantment. Chivalric Alliance. Whenever you attack with 2 more creatures, draw a card. So for, you know, just a white and 1, this is gonna help us draw usually 2 cards each combat to help fill our hand. And then if we ever, you know, have too much cards in hand, we're gonna get a discard, or if we have extra mana, we just pay 2, discard a card, and create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance at instant speed, which is really nice to help us, you know, since we're wanting to kind of turn everything sideways and get our attack triggers. This is a way for us to help create some blockers if we need it. Duelist Heritage, really fun enchantment in the deck, because whenever 1 or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. This kind of turns into a politic card for both myself and my opponents, because it's awesome for me to get that double strike, you know, nice to kind of help protect, with essentially giving it first strike as well. But I can say, hey, opponent, if you swing your big, ginormous 10/10 at someone else, I'll give it double strike. And they're like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. Let's do it. You know, this really helps take the heat off us, and lets us do it twice. So, you know, when we're swinging, we're potentially giving 2 things double strike. When opponents are swinging, if they're not going at us, I can just say, hey, the 2 things get double strike. Let's do a bit more damage. Let's cause a bit of chaos. Really fun card. Fervent Charge for 1 in our colors. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +2/+2 till end of turn. With our commander, we're getting a buff of +4/+4. So this is, you know, a potential game ender with the amount of damage that we can buff. Gleam of Battle. Whenever a creature you control attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it. Potentially we're putting 2 1/1 counters on it. So again, it's just more buffs whenever they're attacking. Hissing Miasma. This is kind of a card that wants to encourage our opponents not to swing at us, because whenever they do, for each creature that's attacking us, they're going to lose 1 life. With our commander, they're going to lose 2. That damage, you know, builds up after a while. Sorry about that, I just had the door open. Yeah, damage deals up after a while, and ends up being a really good kind of drainer for us to really make our opponents be wary to swing at us. Land Tax is just any white deck. I put it in to mana fix, you know, help us if we're behind. Really, you know, if you're going, it sucks if you're going first, because usually you don't get too much use out of it. But if you end up going second in the game, this really helps us get the colors that we need. It's a really strong card overall. Mardu Ascendancy. Whenever a non-token creature control attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. So this is more of that token generation that we want to get our aggro engine going quicker. And then if we ever need to protect our creatures, we can sacrifice it to give it +0/+, or all my creatures +3, or +0/+3 until end of turn. Parasitic Impetus. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and it's goaded. And whenever enchanted creature attacks, its controller loses 2 life and we gain 2 life. So we are preventing a big potential threat from coming at us. At the same time, we are draining the controller and we are gaining life for it. With our commander, it's a lose 4, gain 4. Phyrexian Arena, just a really good draw engine with this deck. Like you said, any black deck really, it's just to get a few extra cards in hand. Righteous Cause, whenever a creature attacks, you gain a life. And that doesn't say whenever a creature you control, it says just whenever a creature attacks. So even if somebody's swinging at an opponent, I'm going to gain life off the creature. If they're swinging at me, I'm going to be gaining a life, potentially, keep us out of legal threat or keeps out of lethal damage range. Really good card to get, and it just helps us overall. Smothering Tithe, this is, again, this is our mana ramp version of mana ramp. It is stacksy. I know people don't like it. I don't really care when a Smothering Tithe hits the table. I'm like, yeah, cool, get your money, but like, this deck needs some kind of mana accelerant to try and keep up with some of the other decks. So there's not too much to talk about when it comes to the lands in this deck. There are a couple though that I'd like to put a bit of emphasis on, because typically it's just like it's Mardu good lands. We have our shocks, our fetches, Ancient Tomb, Command Tower. Utility lands that you see in most decks. But there are a few lands in here that's going to benefit from the attack triggers that Isshin gives. So Den of the Bugbear is one of those lands. It's it become a creature for red and 3, and whenever it attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. But it's still a land. Fun thing about this that I found out is if I have let's just say I have an exorbitant amount of mana, too much mana to know what I deal with, I can activate this ability multiple times to give whenever this creature attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token ability multiple times. So if I put 3 mana into this, let's say I activate it 3 times and I swing, it's going to trigger the ability to make goblins 3 times. Then Isshin, if Isshin's out, it's going to activate another 3 times. Suddenly this land is making us 6 goblins that, if we need it in a pinch, can be pretty useful for us. If I look through Handward Battlements, this is ones that we can give creature haste. So if a creature just came out, we need the swing, we can get it going right away. But this is the second part of the to make the Handware the Writhing Township with Battlements. So for 5 mana, if we control both, we tap it and create the backside, or meld them together and make the backside. Let me just quickly look through. I think Rogue's Passage in there. Just, target creature can't be blocked this turn, so this can give us a free swing with a creature if we need it. If we're worried about, potential blockers or somebody killing it through blockers, this is just an easy way for us to get through. Reliquary Tower, if we end up getting a few of the draw engine cards going, this will help us keep a full hand. And besides that, last one, Shizo's Death Storehouse. It taps to add a black, or for a black and tap, we can target legendary creature, gains fear until end of turn. So this is just another bit of like evasion for us to make sure we can get an attack through. Besides that, I think that is the rest of the deck. That is my Isshin 2 Heavens as 1 deck. I know plenty of you out there could definitely build it better. This is just the version that I've had fun playing with it so far. I hope if you've gotten to the point in this video that you've found a few pieces or cards that you think you might want to put in your Isshin deck, or you may even be inspired to create your own Isshin deck. So if you want to take a deeper look into the deck list, I'll put this in the description. But besides that, if you're here, you got to this point, thank you for watching the video. A like and subscribe would be awesome. But besides that, I guess I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.